Yo, what is up? Welcome to Ninja Geek Game, where I'm going to show you a high-octane, fuel-filled, apocalyptic game of road rage, speed racing, and some dice rolling. Wreckland Run from Renegade Game Studios makes up part of their Solo Hero series, a dice placement game set in a world not too far away from Mad Max. Here you'll use your pool of dice to pimp your ride, but not with alloys, dump valves or tinted windows. Instead you'll equip a vast array of parts to include blasters, speed boosters and flamethrowers to survive 7 different scenarios containing perilous terrain, wild chases and of course a boss. But before we go any further, if you enjoy the video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Let's take a look. The game comes with 4 different vehicles, each with a different setup for initial health, weapons and parts. So if you're looking for a fiery ball of death, then perhaps you'll want to drive Hades' chariot, but want something a bit more robust and you may want to buckle up in Rhinahide. Each vehicle has a unique set of 3 upgrade cards that can be placed over existing parts, and there are 4 drivers to choose from, all with special abilities that can be used during play. There is a small deck of part cards that can be claimed during play to buff up your vehicle with cool gadgets, as well as enemies that are hell-bent on turning you and your car into scrap. We have different types of damage tokens used for both you and the enemy, as well as destruction cards that are used when parts are destroyed on your vehicle, and 2 colours of dice that make up your pool. Now, what I've showed you so far are the generic components of the game, but Wreckland Run also comes with some specific content related to each scenario, and I'll discuss that in a bit. When playing the game, you'll first select one of the 4 vehicles, a robust steel cage perfect for the likes of wacky races. They all have different setup with the parts they start with, as well as the core health values. Some have quite extensive weapons, all in different locations that have unique ways in which they can damage or affect enemies. You'll also get to choose one of the 4 drivers, who are a few spark plugs short of an engine, that have a special ability allowing you to gain vehicle upgrades, repair damage, take free actions or attack enemies, so you have a good combination of player setup from the start. The game comes with 7 scenarios that you must progress through and includes a campaign book, providing a backstory, additional setup requirements and any special rules for each given scenario. There are also secret chapter envelopes that provide new enemy cards, a powerful boss and other content to affect the game in some way that again is specific to the scenario. Each scenario is detailed in a nicely bound campaign book with labelled tabs that provides a long but well scripted backstory for each chapter. It's not completely necessary to read all of this, but it's good fun and sets the scene. I'm only going to show you the content from chapter 1 so not to spoil the game, but the chapter envelopes give you a boss card to fight, more enemies to add to the deck, and some other components that are either mixed to the parts deck at setup or chosen by the player, for example. The setup guide for each chapter will instruct you how to add these additional extras and any special rules for the game, and provides an objective that you must meet in order to win. There is also a separate section for how parts and enemy cards are drawn each round, as well as a boss chart detailing any negative effects for using red dice, as we'll see later. The components are great. I really like the detail that's gone into the vehicle boards and their start weapons, as well as the artwork throughout. It's exceptionally thematic and in my opinion the best amongst the Solo Hero series. The backstories are pretty cool, although I think there's quite a bit of text. I did enjoy reading these before each play. The rulebook is okay, but could have been better laid out with regards to how the text and images relate to each other, and is pretty long at 30 pages for a small boxed game. There are also some errors with card icons that are not shown in the rulebook, but they have a number sign image that relate to dice of the same value, and this was a bit frustrating to figure out. The game is played over 3 rounds, where each is split into a wreckage and run phase. During the wreckage phase, you'll be using a pool of dice to claim part cards to upgrade or repair your vehicle, and in the run phase, these dice are used to activate a horde of enemies, as well as making use of them for your shiny new parts. I mean, what's the point in having a twin cannon Gatling gun if you're not going to use it? During the run phase, you'll be rolling dice and equipping upgrade or part cards to your vehicle. Now, as well as each vehicle having a unique set of upgrade cards available, the campaign book for each chapter dictates how many part cards are drawn at this stage for each round. Here you can make use of both red and white dice, and each card has a different build requirement. Some cards require sets of matching numbers or runs, whereas others can only be built if the dice spent add up to a specific value, and you can even discard parts to re-roll dice. Any upgrades will sit over the vehicle's printed component area on the board, but part cards can be placed anywhere you choose. You may need to select your part location carefully, as some include a barbed wire edge used for ramming enemies in the run phase. If any areas on your vehicle have damage, you can instead spend dice to remove 2 or all tokens based on the dice value spent compared to the die icon on the part card. But be warned, because any time you use a red die in this phase, you must refer to the wreckage boss chart that will kindly reward you with some form of negative effect, like discarding part cards or adding damage to your vehicle. Here you have some difficult decisions to make based on which part to claim that is dependent on your role. Yes, you can discard cards to re-roll dice, but it's a little risky. Sometimes you can equip a few powerful parts, but on occasion it can be difficult to navigate and you have to make do with what's available, which can make the next phase pretty tough to manage. You do get the option to upgrade existing components. These can be expensive and may limit you from equipping and expanding your vehicle with additional parts that could then be used as damage control to protect your core. Once you've spent dice and are happy with your part selection, you then enter the run phase, the most dangerous part of the game that is filled with combat at high speed. Here, enemies surround your vehicle, attack and maneuver, where you then get to unleash your firepower and sneaky tricks in retaliation. The aim is to survive long enough to dwindle the enemy numbers, where they will be looking to take out your weapons and upgrades to damage your core. If you do manage to make it through this stage, then the next round begins with the wreckage phase, where you can again claim parts and repair your vehicle ready for another onslaught. Just as in the wreckage phase, the run phase of each round indicates how many enemy cards you'll face as well as their location with regards to your vehicle. The enemies will sit at one edge of the board and usually attack and damage components on that side. After rolling your pool, you'll select a red die and apply it to one of the active enemies with the matching die value. Each enemy attacks in different ways. They can damage one or more parts of your vehicle, block action spaces, and even add more enemies to the game. They can obliterate parts, making them unusable, and even target the core of your vehicle that cannot be repaired. Not only that, any other enemies that share the same value as the chosen die will also activate, meaning a number of attacks around your vehicle can take place with just one red die selected. After an attack, any enemy that activated will also move around your vehicle, ready to attack another section should you give them the chance. But don't worry, you get to seek revenge by spending up to 3 white dice to activate your vehicle parts. There are too many cards to show you each type of attack, but you can move enemies, fire weapons that deal damage, adjust die values in your pool, and even ram a group of enemies on one side of your board. Each part or upgrade card shows a die of specific value. If you place a die of higher value, then you can activate its primary action, that could be to repair your vehicle or damage an enemy. But if you place a die of matching value, you also get to use the card's special ability that can add modifiers to the attack or provide some form of cool bonus. After you've played up to 3 white dice, the remaining pool is rolled and the turn starts again, first selecting a red die for the enemies. Once all 3 red dice have been used to activate enemies, dice are removed from all cards and rolled again. Play continues until only 2 enemies remained that can change based on scenario, in which case the round ends. But if you take damage equal to your vehicle's core value, then you are destroyed and the game ends. I really like the mechanic of selecting dice to activate cards, whether enemies or vehicle parts. Firstly, you need to take a look at all the enemies in play and may have to decide between a powerful attack from one enemy or a weak attack from 2 or 3 based on die selection, and therefore you have some form of control over enemy activation, at least at first. You can choose not to activate an enemy, but instead roll on the run boss chart, but the effects here are usually far more severe than those seen in the wreck phase. For your actions, you can create a nice chain of events by activating parts that move enemies in line with the board edge that has a high damage causing weapon for a devastating attack. Adding dice to your core area can allow you to change pip values or ram enemies, so you do have options available if the dice are not favourable. Some enemies and parts also have shields negating some damage taken, and this needs to be taken into consideration when activating cards. Other enemies have passive or ongoing abilities that take effect when activated or attacked. One of my favourites is a bomb that detonates on destruction of the enemy unless you deal a specific value of damage. Speaking of which, anytime you destroy an enemy by applying the exact amount of damage equal to its health with no carryover, the enemy card goes into your play area as scrap. The die value icon on this card can then be used in place of a die when activating your vehicle parts or towards claiming them in the wreck phase. This is great as it provides you with a few more options during play if the rolls are unfavourable, but does mean you can't be too cavalier with your attacks. During the third round is usually when the boss turns up, a mean-spirited driver with high health, special abilities and formidable attacks. These cannot be attacked if they're in an area with a standard enemy, so you'll need to be more savvy with your actions and enemy activation to have line of sight to take them out. And good luck, you'll need it. Although a fun and fast-paced game that requires some forward thinking in how to prep and which order of dice to select, it is challenging. Well, brutal at times. A bad draw in the wreck phase can make upgrading your vehicle difficult, even redundant, and a poor roll when activating enemies can result in a hail of destruction to your newly acquired parts, where you'll quickly watch the battle go from worse to inevitable. So be warned, there may be times when you just can't beat a chapter no matter how many times you try. You can adjust the difficulty by adding scrap cards to your play area at setup, but this doesn't always help as the game can be truly punishing. However, upgrading your vehicle is fun with all the weird and wonderful parts, and I do like how this is achieved and the importance of part selection and location. Firstly, some parts have barbed wire edges for ramming, so you may want to consider where to place these on your vehicle. Also, you need to take into consideration what the die icon values are on the claimed part cards before claiming others. If you have many cards with the die icon values of 3 or 4s on your player board, then this will severely limit the use of dice in the run phase unless you're lucky. You'll likely want to have a range of die values on your vehicle parts to give you more options at this time. However, as the game progresses, it doesn't always feel like your vehicle is getting more powerful, just more options during your turn or providing some areas for damage control. Sometimes you may have what you need from earlier rounds and just spend the wreckage phase repairing. I'd prefer different levels of part cards that could be introduced between rounds that would scale up with the difficulty. Also, keeping the boss aside, enemies don't get tougher, just more numerous, although those introduced within chapters remain for the next, which is a nice touch. The replay value of the game is difficult to discuss. Each chapter provides new enemies, bosses, special rules and parts, which is great and all very thematic, but I felt that playing through 7 chapters was quite routine and repetitive at times. I do like the fact you have a good choice of vehicles and drivers to add some variability into the mix, and the game is fun with some nice mechanics although challenging. Out of the 3 solo series games from Renegade Game Studios, I do prefer Warp's Edge and Proving Grounds over Wreckland Run, but do think it has the best theme and narrative. I like the way scrap cards are claimed and used during play that open up a few more options, but didn't get that level of vehicle development that I was hoping for. It's certainly not a bad game and I do like it, but playing as one driver and one vehicle throughout 7 scenarios does make it difficult to want to start again with a different combination. It may have been better to introduce, say, 3 smaller campaigns of 3 scenarios each, so once you've finished one, you could start another with a different vehicle and driver. For me, this would have been a significant change. So, thank you for watching the video. This is Ninja Geek Games. Cheers.